Update you on breaking news we're following right now. Police are telling us a suspect is dead after police-involved shooting in Dolton. Officers responded to East 144th Place early this morning. There was a domestic call at an address there. Police said the suspect had a weapon and that officers opened fire out of self-defense. They say a gun was recovered at the scene. State police are now looking into this. They are in charge of the investigation. We will update you throughout the day, especially on the Fox 32 News at noon with Roseanne.
That's right. I will have more on that. But
police in South Suburban Dolton say they shot and killed a man this morning after he ignored several orders to drop his weapon. CBS 2 investigator Megan Hickey joins us live from the Dolton Police Department with the latest. And Megan, police say the man who was killed was violating an order of protection.
Right, Jim, and we still don't know the specifics of the relationship between the woman who called 911 and the man who was ultimately shot and killed, but we do know that she had an order of protection against him.
I heard the gunshots. I immediately got on the floor because you don't know, where gunfire is actually come from. It sounded from it, but it could be anywhere. So.
Gunshots served as a 5 a.m. wake-up call for neighbors here in the 600 block of 144th Place. What's going through your head when you're hearing gunshots and shouting?
Well, that's not unusual. I mean, that has happened many times here lately.
Dolton police tell me officers responded to a call from a woman about an unwanted male subject that she had an order of protection against. When two uniformed officers arrived, they saw a man in his late 30s or early 40s in a car holding a weapon. Neighbors said it was in this alley where you can still see tire tracks leading into the backyard.
I've heard of like maybe 10 or 15 gunshots in the near the alley. Sound like it's coming from the alley. And I called the Dolton police to they made them aware of it, and they were aware of it.
Dolton police were aware because they were the ones who fired the shots. According to police, after several attempts to get the man to drop or surrender his weapon were ignored, officers shot and killed him.
It was a lot of shooting. I didn't even buy. I think maybe it was 5, 6, or 7 rounds.
We asked Dolton police and state police for information on the man killed and whether there had been any prior calls for service to this address. Police told us they've released as much information as they can at this point, but neighbors told us this was not the first time police had visited.
At several situations with him, and one where she had to call the police.
A weapon was recovered at the scene. A woman came back to the house this afternoon. Ma'am, we're wondering if you'd like to say anything quickly. But she declined to comment. Now, Illinois State Police have taken over this investigation, and we do know that the Dolton police officers involved were equipped with body cameras, and we will be seeing that video at some point in the future. Live in Dolton, Megan Hickey, CBS 2 investigators.
Rob, the incident happened on November 20th, 2023. The family says their 14-year-old son was coming home after getting snacks from a grocery store when he was tased by police in his own backyard and was later hospitalized. The family's attorney says this was a case of mistaken identity and says police must be held accountable. Now, we want to warn you, the video you're about to see might be disturbing.
Get your hands up! Hands up! Hands up! Get down!
On the morning of November 20th of last year, 14-year-old Avarius Thompson, who has autism, was tased by a Dolton police officer. Seconds later,
don't move!
He's tased again.
You gotta get some more!
When you're looking at that body cam video and you see your son, you see him being tased, as a parent, what goes through your mind when you're watching that?
It was frightening. It was very scary. And I can see he was confused. He didn't know what was going on.
According to the incident report, Dolton police were called to assist Riverdale police, who were searching for 4 black males. 2 of the males were said to have fled on foot with rifles and a handgun, according to the report.
Get your hands up!
At around 10:53 a.m., a Dolton police officer spots Thompson in a backyard, pursues him, and tases him.
Don't move! Don't move!
According to the police report, Thompson was positively identified as one of the offenders. But in this body cam video, you can hear what appears to be another officer questioning whether they got the right person.
I don't think this him, bro. We lost one, though. This might not be him.
Thompson's sister comes outside, asking why they have her brother.
He a little boy! What did you do? I didn't do nothing. I know you didn't do nothing.
Thompson's mother, Gwendolyn Torrin, says she rushed to the hospital where her son was being treated.
Come here. He's autistic. Come here. You can't arrest an autistic kid, man. Come here. Y'all taste him. Y'all did that. Listen to me.
After being treated at the hospital, the family says their son was turned over to Riverdale police, who released the boy later that day.
Far too often we're seeing this happen, not just in Illinois, across the country.
The family's attorney, Calvin Townsend II, says to his knowledge, his client has not been charged with a crime. He says this was a case of mistaken identity.
He's a great kid.
Attorney Townsend says his client's clothing was similar to the suspect's description, which made him a target.
He's a 14-year-old kid, and having officers rush towards you with what we know is tasers, but could be perceived as guns, is scary. Then you add the autistic aspect. Again, it's very confusing.
Thompson's parents tell me their son suffered bruising, tase marks on his body, and a fractured hip. They say it was a traumatic experience for their son and the entire family.
He's just a lovable kid, you know, and I couldn't believe that this could happen to my kid.
You see so many stories of stuff like this happening to kids, and they go to jail, they don't come out. Something happens, they end up dying. That happens every day in this world. And I don't want to see it happen to my son or anybody's kid.
I asked Dolton police if charges were filed and if they did in fact pursue the wrong person in this case. The village of Dolton says they have no comment regarding this incident. Riverdale's police chief, he said that multiple people were arrested and charged in this incident. He said the area was searched for a number of hours for weapons, and he said it should be noted that this all occurred near 2 schools. Now, I also asked the Cook County State's Attorney's Office if Avarius Thompson had been charged, and they said they had not been contacted for charges related to this incident for anyone related to this case. So the family says still so many unanswered questions, and they said their son is traumatized.
I can imagine.
A gun missing from the police evidence room. It happened in Dolton, a suburb plagued with corruption and misconduct allegations.
So what happened to that gun? You may be surprised by what CBS 2 investigator Pam Zekman and the Better Government Association discovered when they checked it out.
This shotgun is legally owned by Piers Cole, and so is this gun he thought was an antique German Luger.
This is my grandfather's weapon when he was in the war. This has a lot of sentimental value.
Cole let his friend, Farron Carradine, stay in his Dolton home while on parole for a DUI. But after corrections officers checked on Carradine, they seized both guns, even after Cole explained they were his.
They just arrested Farron
for unlawful use of a weapon, a parole violation.
Makes me angry.
The guns were not yours.
They were not mine.
The charges were dismissed, and a judge ordered the guns returned to Cole, but the handgun was missing. More than 2 years later, after the Dolton police asked the Cook County Sheriff's Office for help, what happened to the missing gun was uncovered. Dolton records show the handgun was not even inventoried by Sergeant Anthony Bankhead. I asked Sergeant Bankhead why.
It was forgotten about. That's all.
You forgot about a gun?
Yes.
After Sheriff's Police questioned Bankhead, he produced the missing gun from his office drawer.
Now I'm looking at this guy wanting to steal it. What is it worth?
Some German Lugers sell online for thousands of dollars. Cole's gun is an American version worth only a few $100s. They believe that you were trying to steal the gun because it was an antique.
No. Pam, I don't want to comment on it. I'm not a gun fanatic.
Does the value of the gun really matter?
No, we're talking about a weapon here, and that's the bottom line. A weapon went missing, and there has to be accountability.
You work for the post office. If you're caught with missing mail, what would happen?
Terminated immediately.
How can you be a watch commander and a supervisor if you're not inventorying evidence correctly?
I don't know what's going on with it. I haven't heard anything more from the chief.
His police chief says possible disciplinary action is under review. Pam Zekman, CBS 2 News.
That disciplinary action could range anywhere from a suspension to to the officer being
newly
fired.
released videos show a fatal encounter between a female driver and Dolton police. Before it was all over, shots were fired, an officer was dragged, and the vehicle crashed into a store. There's your video today. Good afternoon to you. I'm Lourdes Duarte.
And I'm Ben Bradley. 2 officers were injured. The driver was killed. Now, this all started with an argument at a restaurant drive-thru last week.
WGN's Julian Cruz is live in Dolton with more on that stunning video. Julian.
Well, Lourdes, we've got some new developments. Family of the late Alexis Wilson and their lawyers scheduled to hold a press conference here in about a half an hour, demanding that Dolton police release the full, unedited, raw versions of the surveillance cameras and body camera video. Dolton police releasing a condensed version of those videos earlier today.
The vehicle is being used as a weapon, and the officer obviously was in fear for his safety.
With the Dolton patrol officer hanging out the passenger side door of this minivan, the young motorist, 19-year-old Alexis Wilson of Homewood, flees the scene, a fast food restaurant on the 900 block of Sibley Boulevard, with Dolton police officers opening fire.
Once the vehicle actually hit the street, there was a series of gunshots that were heard. The officer responded to those gunshots by firing his weapon.
Some of those shots coming from the patrolman hanging out the door, Dolton's chief explains at a morning press conference. Wilson and her vehicle with the officer all crashing together into a nearby bicycle shop. You can hear the badly injured patrolman after the crash, his name or age not being released, as he recuperates in an unnamed hospital. Whether Alexis Wilson was killed by a bullet or the impact of the crash, an open question for now. The Illinois State Police Public Integrity Unit, heading up the investigation, yet to release details on the autopsy, with results from toxicology reports still pending.
In the climate of today, it is very important for the public to see both sides of the incident.
Dolton's police chief releasing the nearly 30-minute-long edited video from the fateful morning of July 27th. Police body cams and restaurant security cameras capturing the tragic incident.
The female driver was asked numerous times to step out of the car.
Police called to the scene initially by a 911 call with reports of an irate woman banging on the drive-through window of Baba's restaurant, employees reporting that they saw a gun.
We're not really trying to go over there because nobody wants to get shot in here. Step out.
But lawyers for Wilson's family say this snippet of video shows police punching the teen in the face, precipitating her attempt to escape, they say. Now, one complicating factor, the video shows Alexis Wilson, who was wearing nothing but a halter top, telling police that she did not want to step out of her minivan because she was naked, police fearing that she had a gun. They say that Illinois State Police are in possession of the weapon that was recovered at the crash scene. The family telling us that the teenager did not carry a weapon. In Dolton, Julian Cruz, WGN News.
Now to a developing story in Dolton. The deputy police chief facing a new lawsuit involving tens of thousands of dollars in overtime pay.
WGN's Jenna Barnes is here with the latest on that tonight.
Yeah, guys, this lawsuit alleges that just in the last year, Dolton's acting police chief paid himself more than $100,000 in OT that he was not supposed to receive, capping off a busy week of scrutiny for one of the mayor's top allies.
We have an outstanding, and I do mean outstanding, police department.
Dolton's acting police chief, Louis Lacey, now being sued by the village for overtime they say he paid himself but was never eligible to receive. The lawsuit alleges between August of last year and July of this year, Lacey submitted and approved nearly $140,000 in overtime for himself, even though he's a salaried employee not entitled to OT. The village also fired him last week.
The meeting will be shut down.
Often seen calling for order during Dolton's fiery board meetings and even ordering members of the public to leave, Lacey is a close ally of Mayor Tiffany Henyard and insists only the mayor has the power to terminate his employment. He pleaded not guilty Thursday to federal charges of bankruptcy fraud and perjury and was ordered to hand over his guns. His attorney believes prosecutors are using the charges to get him to turn on Henyard in their investigation into her spending.
One way that the government always does it is to go and investigate people around her, and that's what they're doing here.
They also indicted Henyard's top aide, Keith Freeman, on a bankruptcy fraud charge earlier this year.
The difference is that Mr. Lacey is not guilty. I guess Mr. Freeman has admitted his guilt.
Why would you say that?
I believe he's cooperating.
Trustees say Freeman is doing his job as village administrator. As Henyard called a mandatory meeting for police on Thursday, Freeman replied, Lewis Lacey is no longer employed by the village of Dolton.
Are you in charge? Who's in charge?
Silence and a smile for WGN Investigates Ben Bradley as Lacey went into that meeting, but video from inside reveals his answer.
Do what you want, but anything after this is insubordination.
His job in dispute, and now so is the money he was paid to do it. Lacey's attorney calls today's lawsuit baseless and frivolous. Of course, it was just last week that former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot presented her findings of her investigation into Dolton's finances, reporting that Lacey was paid more than $200,000 in overtime over the course of the past few years. Guys.
Thank you, Jenna.
The reaction from the community. Courtney?
Yeah, good morning to you both. A federal indictment that came down yesterday accuses Dolton's acting police chief, Lewis Lacey, of bankruptcy fraud. This comes about a week after the village fired Lacey after placing him on leave. But despite getting notice of his termination, we're told he was still showing for work.
It's a great day in Dolton. Justice is being served.
Dolton residents reacting after the police department's acting chief is slapped with a 9-count federal indictment. Lewis Lacey now accused of bankruptcy fraud, making false statements and lying under oath.
I'm just so happy because this man needs to be taken off the street. He does not need a gun or anything, period.
According to the 24-page indictment, Lacey has filed for bankruptcy 7 times over the last 40 years, including 2 times in the last 5. In one case dating back to 2015, Lacey is accused of largely underreporting his income and lying about being separated from his wife so he could claim she wasn't contributing to their shared expenses. All of that to allegedly avoid paying back more than $40,000 he owed in a settlement.
This is going to be a domino effect, and we got to take the rest of the trash out.
Residents rejoicing the news, investigators say, stems from an ongoing federal investigation. Lacey, now the second ally of the self-proclaimed super mayor to face federal charges of bankruptcy fraud, but his attorney calls this a witch hunt.
They're trying to find people that will shy away and cooperate with them against the mayor.
Henyard's top aide, Keith Freeman, also federally charged, now cooperating with village trustees who called for an investigation against the mayor. Lacey's attorney saying he believes prosecutors are targeting people they believe they can flip, and residents say they expect to see that happen.
I think that this is a good thing because I'm sure Lacey is going to try to save himself.
Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot recently revealing findings of an investigation she was paid by the village to conduct. While that was separate from this indictment, it laid out big allegations against Lacey.
With all due respect to Lightfoot, it was her conclusion. She is nobody.
Lightfoot was a formerly high-powered federal prosecutor before her time as Chicago's mayor. Her findings revealed Lacey is accused of being paid more than $200,000 in overtime over the last few years, despite his inability to receive overtime pay.
She's just the person that came out with a conclusion, and the village is taking it as if it was the scripture.
Residents now waiting to see what comes next for Lacey, the department, and the village.
There are some good people working for the police department in Dolton. My wife and I have met a couple of them, and I hope the powers that be will allow one of the good ones to fill the space.
Now, Lacey's attorney says he will surrender in court and plans to plead not guilty. Each of these charges, if convicted, is punishable by up to 5 years in federal prison. In the newsroom, back to you.
Reaction from the community. Courtney?
Yeah, good morning to you both. A federal indictment that came down yesterday accuses Dolton's acting police chief, Lewis Lacey, of bankruptcy fraud. This comes about a week after the village fired Lacey after placing him on leave. But despite getting notice of his termination, we're told he was still showing for work.
It's a great day in Dolton. Justice is being served.
Dolton residents reacting after the police department's acting chief is slapped with a 9-count federal indictment. Louis Lacey now accused of bankruptcy fraud, making false statements, and lying under oath.
I'm just so happy because this man needs to be taken off the street. He does not need a gun or anything, period.
According to the 24-page indictment, Lacey has filed for bankruptcy 7 times over the last 40 years, including 2 times in the last 5. In one case dating back to 2015, Lacey is accused of largely underreporting his income and lying about being separated from his wife so he could claim she wasn't contributing to their shared expenses. All of that to allegedly avoid paying back more than $40,000 he owed in a settlement.
This is going to be a domino effect, and we got to take the rest of the trash out.
Residents rejoicing the news, investigators say, stems from an ongoing federal investigation. Lacey, now the second ally of the self-proclaimed super mayor to face federal charges of bankruptcy fraud, but his attorney calls this a witch hunt.
They're trying to find people that will shy away and cooperate with them against the mayor.
Henyard's top aide, Keith Freeman, also federally charged, now cooperating with village trustees who called for an investigation against the mayor. Lacey's attorney saying he believes prosecutors are targeting people they believe they can flip, and residents say they expect to see that happen.
I think that this is a good thing because I'm sure Lacey is going to try to save himself.
Former Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot recently revealing findings of an investigation she was paid by the village to conduct. While that was separate from this indictment, it laid out big allegations against Lacey.
With all due respect to Lightfoot, it was her conclusion. She is nobody.
Lightfoot was a formerly high-powered federal prosecutor before her time as Chicago's mayor. Her findings revealed Lacey is accused of being paid more than $200,000 in overtime over the last few years, despite his inability to receive overtime pay.
She's just the person that came out with a conclusion, and the village is taking it as if it was the scripture.
Residents now waiting to see what comes next for Lacey, the department, and the village.
There are some good people working for the police department in Dolton. My wife and I have met a couple of them, and I hope the powers that be will allow one of the good ones to fill the space.
Now, Lacey's attorney says he will surrender in court and plans to plead not guilty. Each of these charges, if convicted, is punishable by up to 5 years in federal prison. In the newsroom, back to you.
Several new developments in South Suburban Dolton today. First, the state comptroller has suspended some payments to the village because it has failed to follow the law by providing financial reports. That was just today. The comptroller says that she's concerned following our reporting on allegations of mismanagement in Dolton. The decision means that the village won't receive $135,000 this year that the state usually transfers to communities for unpaid traffic, parking citations, and other judgments. And that's not all that's happening in Dolton today.
Are you in charge? Who's in charge?
And a power struggle is also playing out.
It's a police standoff, but it's unlike any you've seen. It's unclear exactly who is running the police department and the rest of the village as Mayor Tiffany Henyard struggles to show that she's still in control. Ben Bradley continues his exclusive reporting from Dolton.
Is there a motion to terminate Keith Freeman?
Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard tried to fire her top aide last week, but was met with silence from trustees who refused to vote on the termination.
This what y'all say about the person. Y'all say he's never at work, he'll do his job. Is this what y'all say? So what we doing, guys?
The standoff is surprising given that trustees once despised Village Administrator Keith Freeman for helping Henyard run the show in Dolton and Thornton Township, but he's now cooperating with trustees investigating Henyard's spending.
I had trouble following it as well, but now Keith Freeman is cooperating, doing what he should have been done in the first place.
Cooperating with trustees.
With the trustees, absolutely, doing his job.
That leads us back here to the steps of the Dolton Police Department. Trustees tried to fire Henyard's hand-picked acting police chief, Louis Lacey, after their investigation found he collected $200,000 in overtime that they say he wasn't entitled to. Mayor Henyard wasn't having it. She insists Lacey is still the village's top cop. Dolton police officers and commanders received an email summoning them to a mandatory meeting with Mayor Henyard and Chief Lacy. Soon after, Freeman fired off a reply that read, "Louis Lacy is no longer employed by the village of Dolton. Mr. Lacy is not allowed in any spaces reserved for employees without an escort."
We'd like to talk to you about whether you're still running things here in Dolton.
Lacy arrived for the hastily called meeting, but sat in his souped-up Dodge Durango.
I think we're in a standoff.
As the minutes ticked by, Lacy drove around looking for a way into the station.
So somebody closed the garage on the acting chief, and now he's pulling away.
Then it was time to play hide and seek with Mayor Henyard as she circled the station looking to avoid our cameras and questions.
For more than a half an hour now, we've been playing this cat and mouse game with the acting police chief and now Mayor Henyard.
Lacy later returned, but still wasn't talking.
Are you in charge? Who's in charge?
WGN Investigates obtained video of Henyard telling police commanders this afternoon she and Lacy are still running things.
Keith Freeman do not work here, he's fired. So stop playing these silly games, Board of Trustees, and putting people's lives in jeopardy.
Do what you want. But anything after this is insubordination.
Mayor Henyard is now trying to pin the blame for more than $100,000 in questionable spending on first-class air travel, luxury hotels, meals, and more on her once trusted aide, Keith Freeman. But remember, Henyard frequently reminds her critics she's the boss.
I'm going to remember this, because at the end of the day, I told you, you guys don't run the day-to-day, the mayor does.
Both Freeman and Acting Police Chief Lacy are facing pressure to cooperate in the ongoing federal investigation after prosecutors charged both of them with bankruptcy fraud in separate cases. As the power play plays out, it's residents who suffer. Many voice their frustrations at the most recent village board meeting.
What about us? What about our fears? What about our tax dollars? I wish the FBI is around the corner so they can come and raid this place, because all of y'all deserve to go to jail.
In Dolton, Ben Bradley, WGN Investigates.